Hey everyone! If you use Microsoft Azure, then you know that they often decommission services or make changes to their platform that require you to make changes to your Azure resources. And so in today's video, I want to walk you through a workflow that I typically use, how I find which resources need to be updated, and how I can use PowerShell to update them. And so for today's specific example, we're going to look at the TLS 1.0 and 1.1 deprecation. So as of August 31st, 2025, those will no longer be supported by all of Azure resources. And so up here we can see I have an Azure Event Hub namespace, still using TLS 1.0. I have a Service Bus namespace, also still using TLS 1.0. And an Azure storage account, again, using TLS version 1.0. So I need to get all of these updated to version 1.2. And so it would be simple enough to come into the portal and just, choose 1.2, save, and be on my way. But if you have hundreds or thousands of resources, it's really not practical to just be pointing and clicking through the portal. And you can't really be sure that you got all of them potentially. And so your first thought might be, well, why don't we just use a simple PowerShell script to roll through, say, all of the Azure Service Bus namespaces and update them all. And so that's what this little script does. I'm not going to run it, but we'll just walk through it real quick. So you would install the Az PowerShell module if you don't already have it installed. We just connect to your Azure account. From there, it just goes and grabs all of the subscriptions that you have access to and loops through them, sets the context to that Azure subscription. And then you can just get all of the Service Bus namespaces, loop through all of those, and then use this command here, set Az Service Bus namespace, to set the minimum TLS version to 1.2. So, this is a really great shotgun approach if you just want to roll through every Service Bus namespace and update them all. But oftentimes you probably want to do some testing and you might not want to update all of them at once. You might just want to update only your test Service Bus namespaces, not your production ones, right? You want to update them, make sure nothing's going to break, so that if you need to roll it back, you can roll it back easy. So we're not going to use this script. And you might also be wondering, how do I even find which resources need to be updated? That's a challenge all on its own. So let's take a look here. Back in the Azure portal, what you want to do is you can just go to the home page and you want to load up the advisor. If you don't see it, you can just search for it. And so here is the Azure advisor, and over on the left you'll see there's workbooks, so we're going to select that. And specifically we want the service retirement workbook. So it's still in preview, and what this will do is this will show us all of the upcoming Azure service decommissions that are coming. So you can see over on the right here we have another notice about the TLS 1.0 and 1.1 retirement coming up. I'm just going to go ahead and sort these by retirement date, and you'll see it lists a whole bunch of things that are being decommissioned. These ones already happened in the past, they were for 2024. So I'm just going to keep scrolling down, and here we can see I have some services that will be impacted. So again, I have the Event Hub and my Service Bus namespace. Right now they're impacted because they're not using 1.2, they're still set to using TLS 1.0. And I'm just going to keep scrolling down. There's some other ones, like here's Azure Cache for Redis, Cosmos DB, SQL DB, SQL MI. So there's a lot of things that are going to be affected by the TLS 1.0, 1.1 deprecation and storage account. So I just selected the three that I know about. Again, this is a great view for finding which resources will be affected. So now that I've selected those three, I can scroll down, and here are the actual specific resources that will be affected. And so again, you could just come in here, I could choose one of them and go to the configuration tab, and again, I could just manually click and change the version in the portal and save, but again, if you have hundreds or thousands of these, it's not really practical to do, or it would be a lot easier to do it with scripting and automation. So what I'm going to do here is you can just pretend I had hundreds or thousands of things showing up here, but you're going to go ahead and click on the ... on the top right and export this to Excel. So we'll save that. Then I'm going to go ahead and open that. And so all the data that was being shown in that grid, we now have it in a nice Excel spreadsheet where you could apply filtering on it and grouping. So you have your resource groups, you have your subscriptions, and so if you wanted, you could pick out, only show me the ones in my test subscriptions, so that you could just select only those ones first. So the field, this has a lot of information in it, but the one I'm interested in right now is the resource name. This gives us the fully qualified resource name that has all the pieces in it that we need. So you can just pretend, I added a filter to this Excel spreadsheet. I filtered it down to only my test environment, and I'm selecting all of the resources in my test environment that need to be updated. So I'm just going to copy these 3 rows, and I'm just going to paste these into Notepad++. I could do this directly in VS Code if I wanted as well, but what I want to do here is I have a script, a different script, PowerShell script, all ready to go, where we can actually just pass in the specific resources that we want to go flip TLS 1.2 on for, and it'll loop through all of those. But before I can just paste them in here, I need to get them in this format where they have a single quote on both sides. So I could do this in VS Code. I like doing it in Notepad+, just because. But what I'm going to do is hit Control-H to do the find and replace. I'm going to make sure regular expressions are on. Let's go ahead and use the hat or $. And what that means is, if you don't know regular expression, the hat means the start of a line, the pipe is the or symbol, and the $sign is the end of a string. So this is going to say the very start or the very end of a string. Let's replace that with a single quote. And I'm going to say replace all. And so now you can see every line is now wrapped in a single quote. So I'm just going to select all and copy that. Let's go back over to our PowerShell script here. And so these are the Azure resource IDs that I want to update. And so I paste them in, and now we're all ready to go. This script is very similar to the other one, but instead of looping over every single subscription, grabbing every single Azure Service Bus namespace, what it does instead is we're going to pull out the resource parts. So we're going to pull out the subscription ID, resource group name, resource type, and the name, because those are in these strings. So here we have our subscription, the subscription ID, you have your resource group name, we have the type of resource that it is, and then the actual name of the resource itself. So again, we're just going to connect to Azure. That's the very first thing we do. And then instead of pulling back all the subscriptions and Service Bus namespaces, we're just going to loop through this list, pull out all of the pieces that we need in order to make the calls to set AZ Service Bus namespace. We need the resource group name, we need the resource name, and we need the subscription ID so we can set our AZ context before we call any of those. And so here I also have the resource type, so I can say if this is a service bus namespace, we're going to call set AZ Service Bus namespace. If it's an event hub, we're going to call set AZ Event Hub namespace. If it's a storage account, we're going to call set AZ storage account. And there's a whole bunch more that we could go and add. These are just the 3 that I needed for my specific demo. And so that's what we're going to go with. And so I'm going to hit F5 to run this script. And so again, the very first thing it does is connect AZ account. And so it's going to ask me to log in. Here we go, I get the prompt. It's going to ask me then which default subscription I want to connect to. And I'm just going to hit enter to get past that once it asks. There. And so now it's going to roll through these 3 resources that I provided. And depending on the resource type, it'll call the appropriate Azure PowerShell command to set the TLS version to 1.2. And so this can take a little while. It can take 30 seconds for each one, so it can take a little while to run. But imagine if I had hundreds or thousands of these. Again, having a script like this just makes it very simple, very easy to roll through them all. You could just walk away from your computer for 5 minutes or half hour or however long it takes, and it would update all of these for us. And again, it's great if you don't want to take that shotgun approach where you just update all resources to TLS 1.2. We only want to do, say, the ones in our test environment. And then maybe a week later, we only want to do the ones in our staging environment. And then assuming no problems have been found, or if any problems were found, we've fixed up the applications to address them, then you could go ahead and run it for all of your production resources. And so this is just going to roll through those. It's just about done. But we can already go back, and I'm going to load up. So here's our Event Hub namespace. Let's just go ahead and refresh this. And we should be able to see that now it's using TLS 1.2. Yep, there we go. And so if I go back to my script, there. Now it's done running. All 3 resources should be updated by now. We'll just refresh this guy and refresh this guy. And yeah, so that's my typical workflow of how I just update things an environment at a time. So we can see that one was indeed updated to 1.2, and our Azure Storage account was also updated to 1.2. Again, this Microsoft Advisor, the Service Retirement Workbook, is a game changer. It is amazing for finding the resources that need to be updated. You can tell which of your resources would be impacted or not. And I should be able to now go ahead and refresh this workbook. And now that all of my services, or those 3 services, have been updated to TLS 1.2, they should no longer appear on this list. And let's just confirm that. So here was, yes, here's our event grid and our event hub and our Azure Service Bus namespaces, and now we can see we have no resources impacted. So we can confirm that yes, they have all actually been fixed up. So that's my typical workflow that I use. I hope you found some part of it helpful if you didn't already know. And yeah, if you want more of these types of videos, give me a like, give me a subscribe, let me know in the comments. I'm happy to make this type of content if people find it valuable. Awesome, thank you.